So once you have attached all your teardrops and sewn all of your teardrops, we are going to do our flower. So at the beginning we glued on our small purple teardrops, and I've just gone ahead and I have used a rope stitch around each of them, just like this one around here, to secure them in place. And then we're going to do a straight stitch and a French knot on each of the petals. So I'm going back to my purple thread, starting from the centre, one long straight stitch towards the edge, like that. And what I do is I go round and do all the straight stitches first. Don't pull too hard, otherwise it will start folding in on itself. And then I go back and do the French knots afterwards. So nice long stitches. And then we do some French knots. So almost finished with those. Okay, so then I'm going to go back to the first stitch, bring my needle up the very end. I'm going to wrap 2 or 3 times. I might do 3. 1, 2, 3. Put my needle back in, holding that working thread taut. And oops, gently pulling through, and there we have got a French knot, and you're going to repeat that all the way around on those before we go on to our final circle. Time to add the central circle to our flower, so I'm just going to dab it on a little bit of glue to keep it in position. Oh, obviously not enough glue, there we go. Just to keep it in position. And then we're going to do a whipped running stitch. A whipped running stitch is a normal running stitch, and then you are going to weave another colour in between, which joins it all together as a circle. So you don't need to worry too much about the length of your stitches, but do try to keep them even, will make it your job easier. So I'm going to bring my needle up a couple of millimetres just from the edge, and I'm going to do fairly small stitches, trying to keep them an even distance away from each other and away from that edge. If you wanted to, you could draw a guide circle using your fabric pen, or you can just eyeball it, which is what I'm doing. Now I've used the gold metallic thread for the interlacing, but if you've decided that you don't wish to use the metallic thread and you've been using normal embroidery threads instead, you could use the yellow, but we're going to use the yellow for the French knots, so you could use this light blue to weave in between those purples, or even this lilac, that would look quite nice. So continuing around that circle and then swapping thread to whichever colour you are going to use for your whipped running stitch. To start off the whipped running stitch, you're going to bring your needle up at the end of one of the stitches. So you're going to come up the same hole as one of the stitches and pull your thread out. Just like that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to run your needle underneath each of the stitches, weaving in and out. So a bit like we did before when we were doing our Eskimo laced. It's easier to use the eye of your needle, and then if it gets caught, it's easier to disentangle yourself. So I'm going to go from it's important when you're doing the whip that you go the same direction. So I'm always going to go from the outside into the middle. So I'm going to put my needle underneath that stitch there and pull. Go along to the next stitch from the outside of the circle in to the centre and pull. As I pull it close, you'll see it does a line joining them together. So remember to go the same way, outside into the centre, trying not to get it hooked around, which it keeps on wanting to do, and it just joins the stitching together. Don't pull it too tight, you want to have that nice kind of bumpy effect as you go around. If you pull it too tight, then your stitches will look really flat. As I said, if you don't want to use the metallic, you could use an alternative thread for this, or you could even use the same thread. You could use the purple, and it would just look like a kind of nice twisty line of stitches. But I think it's nice to use another thread. And they go round, and then you're going to swap to your colour for your central French knots, and we will have finished all of the embroidery stitch. I pulled that bit tight there. If you pull it too tight, you can just use your needle to undo what you've done. Then we're going to swap to the colour we need for our French knots, and we have finished all the embroidery on the top of the flower, and I can show you how to make up what you're doing. So to finish off, I'm just going to take it back down through the back, the end of one of those stitches, purple stitches. There we go. Ooh. I don't know if you noticed there, I pulled it a bit too tight and it's pulled those purple stitches forward. So just going to go back, undo that, and gently pull it closed. That's better. This one's gone a bit doolally here. That's what happens when you pull too tightly. But you can always manipulate the stitches a little bit. There we go, just take your time. Don't rush. I'm going to put our French knots in the middle of our flower. Now, I wouldn't normally do this, but I'm just going to demonstrate how I am going to position my French knots. I'm going to use a pen to mark them out, and you might want to do this, you might not want to. So I'm going to put my first French knot in the middle, and then I am going to put them around in a circle, kind of in front of each of those petals. So you've got one in the middle, and then you have got 6 French knots around the edge. Okay, now start with the one in the middle. Bringing my thread up, wrapping it twice, taking it back down. Should be an expert at French knots now with the amount that we've done on this pincushion. So there's my central one, and then I'm just going to go round and do the French knots as a clock, wrapping it around twice, putting it back in. And there we go. If you ever find that your French knots are not working, it's quite easy to just get a pair of scissors and just chop them off and start again. Quite like this, it looks like little bits of pollen in the middle of our flower. There we go. You're just going to carry on all the way around.